Bitcoin dominance on the weekly, an insane power move happening right now. It looks like altcoins are toast, but I think the better question would be, is this the exact setup for altcoin season? And I think the answer to that is yes. And in the first 5 minutes of the video, I'm going to explain and show you exactly why I think that. We're also going to zoom in on the Bitcoin daily chart just to talk about this just crazy area of resistance Bitcoin's at on the macro. And I'm going to discuss two of my favorite altcoins going into this, I think, altcoin season. So hit the subscribe, hit the like on the way in, and let's just jump into it. I really do. I think altcoin season is approaching. If you've been watching my videos, you see this purple line over here, kind of a reference for me, just to kind of gauge when this might happen. But very important, even in this video, what we're going to be discussing. So a couple of things. I want to discuss time frame, and I want to discuss momentum, because these things coming together for me are signaling Bitcoin dominance and this increase, this higher high, higher low move on the weekly chart for Bitcoin dominance is getting ready to come to an end. Now, let me explain. Let's first start with the time frame perspective, just to give a sense of what's going on here. And I know many of you might already know, but I want to just lay this out. Right now, this purple line for reference is altcoin season historically, right? So white line, Bitcoin halving, purple line, altcoin season begins. Last cycle, Bitcoin halving, white line, purple line, altcoin season. And when you see Bitcoin dominance falling, that's altcoin season. Same thing 2 cycles ago. Purple line, altcoin season. So we're getting very close to that area on this chart. And from a time frame perspective, we're just about a couple of months away, right? Like 50 some days on this chart right now. And if we just look, what I want to point out first, and then we're going to look at momentum, it really brings this together, brings the thought together. If we look at last altcoin season when it started, right? Leading into that, Bitcoin dominance was pumping for months into that. And then even in the cycle before, you can just see leading into altcoin season, Bitcoin dominance wasn't pumping, but it was 95% or so. And then it finally just fell off a cliff. Now, there's something very important happening, and this is kind of like the magnet for Bitcoin dominance through these cycles. Right now, where Bitcoin dominance is approaching 60% is of no surprise. This is a lower high Fibonacci range that we've been talking about for a very long time now. It's the last swing high on the Bitcoin dominance chart when Bitcoin dominance fell into altcoin season to the swing low of basically the end of Bitcoin dominance falling. And we have this lower high Fibonacci, this green area on the chart. So you see that's around 60% at the lower end, 65% at the higher end. And we have this rectangle now Bitcoin dominance has been making its way up to. Last cycle, Bitcoin dominance pulled back to that area as well. And that is exactly where it started to fall. So that has 100% been in play. Anywhere in that range for me of a lower high on the macro, it's just, it would be so normal. And now that we're actually getting there, I think for altcoins I would say is a good thing. It's painful in the shorter term, and it's painful going through it, right? Even last cycle, just painful. But it's good if we want altcoin season to happen. Now, if we start bringing in the momentum oscillators as that move is happening, we really start getting some hints. And this is where I think altcoin season indicators start kind of showing themselves. What I'm watching is the weekly RSI, the slower moving momentum oscillator. We had a swing high back here, overbought. And yes, right now it's breaking out of this kind of shorter term consolidation. And we're even escaping kind of this moving average on the RSI. We're getting a move to the upside, might even hit into overbought. But where does this go? How much higher does this go is the question for me. And when it does hit a wall, are we getting some kind of lower high? This is something I'm watching. I don't know if it's going to happen. Maybe we get a higher high, right? But I'm very curious to see if we get a lower high. And that would be very significant because we have higher highs across the board for Bitcoin dominance right now while that's happening. So from a very simple perspective, that is some bearish divergence. And it's a weekly chart zoomed out. It's a multi-cycle move that we're waiting for to play out. But that's very important, bearish dominant or bearish divergence for Bitcoin dominance. The other thing is MACD, you can just see, kind of just been trending down on the MACD. And the stock RSI in this context gives us a really nice clue. Hit overbought once, consolidates, maybe probably heading into overbought once again, but this move right here, at this moment of the cycle, remember this purple line, remember the timeline of it all. Look at last cycle, right before Bitcoin dominance fell. Very similar move, going into that purple line. That is to say, hits oversold, consolidates, hits oversold again, and then altcoin season begins. We could be onto a very similar move. Go back 2 cycles. Overbought. I'm sorry. I think I'm saying oversold. Overbought on this stock RSI, and then Bitcoin dominance falls. So all of the data, and really much of the data that we've been tracking going into Bitcoin dominance, just putting in these higher highs and higher lows, many of these things that we've been tracking and the indicators we're waiting for, they're coming together actually very nicely. And I know if you're an altcoin holder, you're just like, well, this isn't looking too good. And I just zoom out on the charts. I look at these indicators and I'm just kind of like, well, if we want altcoin season, this is actually probably the best thing that could be happening. We don't want Bitcoin falling right now. We don't want Bitcoin falling into oversold areas right now, because then it's likely to get a bounce. We want Bitcoin going crazy, getting overbought, putting in bearish divergence indicators so that it can fall. So this is the best setup, though it might kind of like cause a lot of people to become doubtful of altcoin season. This is the best setup for altcoin season. That just is the way it is. It's unemotional. It's just data, and we have to wait for it to play out. And that's kind of what I'm doing on this Bitcoin dominance chart. But speaking of that, I think a lot of it might have to do with what happens on the Bitcoin daily chart. And that is right here. Look at this. Look at this resistance. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to move on to a couple of other altcoins I think kind of play into Bitcoin dominance story that we're telling in this video. But I had to just point this out because it's happening right now, and who knows what we'll wake up to tomorrow. But this upper trend line is that massive like 7-month upper trend line of this massive falling wedge that everybody's been tracking. And just look at it on the daily. It's basically days now, just hovering right at that area, faking everybody out. Are we going to break up? Are we going to break down? Nobody knows. For me, I'm just very simply watching actually this upper trend line of this symmetrical triangle that we charted to kind of help with a little bit of a short-term view. And right now that trend line is right around 65.5, not a ton, a couple $1,000s below where Bitcoin is right now. So the short-term resistance range kind of in that area where Bitcoin is literally now as I do the video, down to that area. I'm just curious to see, maybe Bitcoin just kind of starts bouncing around in that area. If not, and we fall back into basically the wedge of this symmetrical triangle that we have here, what's it doing at the moving averages? So the next confluent area of support is the 20 and 200 right at 63,400. Maybe we get just a big candle down to that area tomorrow. What happens? Is there support? Something I'll be watching. So just allowing Bitcoin to chill out for a second here, cool off, especially if it's going to continue to the upside. It's not a bad thing, whether it's sideways, whether it's down to the moving averages, even the 50 down here around 61.5. Throwbacks before powerful breakouts are very needed, much often needed. So that's Bitcoin. So here's the thing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but I just want to let you know, I'm going to be discussing a lot of Bitcoin in this bull cycle. I'm going to be discussing a lot of crypto news in this cycle, but I'm also probably, when we're talking about coins, I'll be probably mentioning a bunch, but it's going to be ADA and Dog. ADA and Dog. I just think for me, and this is me, maybe I'm just so different than most people, that is fine, but it makes so much sense to me. We have the most undervalued, just from a narrative perspective, it's such a sleeper because so many people think it's not going to do anything. So as a value investor, just it's the best blue chip altcoin, I think, for my risk appetite, for the potential upside of an explosive move similar to what we saw in the last cycle. And then we're going to talk about the dog chart as well. So before we get to the dog chart, though, I do just want to discuss one thing on the ADA chart. And it's not even ADA USD. It's ADA BTC. So let's open up the ADA BTC chart because it's absolutely terrible looking. And I think it's just so important just to mention one thing in regards to this. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I will say I don't like it. I'll say that. But I should say, when you zoom out on a chart, it does not surprise me. And if we look at last cycle, at this time, at this moment, look where ADA was. And I just want to point something out to you on the ADA BTC pair. This was actually January 2021. ADA was looking terrible. Now, why that's so brutal is because if you remember back in November, right, back here, that was when Bitcoin was breaking the bull market doors. Bitcoin was, in November 2020, putting in some really bullish work. and just about to go crazy. So if you look at this, November 2020 and then beyond, just look at that. Bitcoin's going parabolic. And on the ADA BTC pair, look what was happening. It was falling. It was failing. It looked like it was done. We might get a similar picture for ADA this cycle if Bitcoin takes off, and all altcoins, or I should say many altcoins. But look what happened next. ADA BTC recovered, it bounced. And so when you zoom out on chart, I just think that's very much needed at this moment, because the moment we are of this cycle is very similar to all back here. And so that's something I'm watching on the ADA BTC chart. And we're going to continue tracking ADA. And then dog is like, dog might be my power play out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere. I've done videos on it. I'm going to be doing more content on it. It's $500 some million market cap with Doge potential upside. This is on Bitcoin, the number one meme coin on Bitcoin. I would say I just think it's the number one coin on Bitcoin. And the upside potential of this for me makes so much sense. And because of my risk appetite, you all know I'm not some crazy like meme coin person, but because of it, we have the number one meme coin on the number one chain. It's on Bitcoin. Just put meme aside, put the word dog aside. This coin, especially with meme coin super cycle in play, the meme coin hype, this is whether you like it or not, a very, very, very large part of crypto. The upside here is absolutely incredible. And I say that as a value investor. And I realize maybe it's hard to digest for some, but that just is the way it is for me. And so when we're talking about altcoins, I really like the risk reward. I like the risk balance. And for me, with my risk tolerance, dog and ADA, it really does actually feel pretty comfortable. And so those are my thoughts. So you can anticipate that I will be doing a lot of content on both of these, as well as Bitcoin, of course, and just crypto markets in general, just crypto in general, altcoins in general. It doesn't matter what altcoin you hold. That's what we'll be covering. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all of these things. Hit the subscribe, hit the like. I will see you all in the next video. God bless.